On the night of September 23rd, 1992, 23-year-old Dail Dinwiddie had plans to attend a U2 concert with around a dozen of her friends in Columbia, South Carolina. After the concert, the group went out for drinks and ended up at one of their favorite bars, Jungle Jim's. At around 1 o'clock in the morning, Dail was separated from her friends after getting lost in a large crowd. One by one, her friends headed home in separate vehicles, each of them assuming that Dail had caught a ride with someone else. But the next morning, panic spread as Dail's parents realized she never made it home. Hey guys, and welcome to the Moms and Mysteries podcast, a true crime podcast featuring myself, Mandy, and my dear friend, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mandy. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
Good. I don't know why I said it that way. As soon as I said it, I was like, I said something wrong, but I don't even know what it was.
It wasn't wrong. It was a little unsure.
True. Mandy, I have to say, you have maybe found the secret to life. And I've been hearing you say this for years. I know. Don't be shocked. It's getting up like 2 hours earlier than everyone in your house.
Yes.
I
swear by it.
Footloose and fancy free. My house is
It's
clean.
a cheat code for life.
It truly is. And I started to tell my husband about it, and I was like, absolutely not. I can't have you ruining this time for me. This is
my
time.
I know. I've been waking up early forever.
You're
and
amazing.
Being the only one, and I love it. But now my husband has decided he wants to start waking up early. And I'm like, I love you. I do. I really love you.
Absolutely.
But I also love my time in the morning without anyone else awake.
I like knowing everyone is unconscious. But no, really, it really has like, I just feel like a new person. It's wonderful. I can almost cry. I'm so excited.
Oh my
yeah. And I've been listening to you forever. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I will wake up 5 minutes before everyone else. Oh, everything. It's just so pristine. I've never been happier. Get back with me next week when I'm like, you know what? I need a nap.
I love that.
But so far, so good.
After all this time, we're finally rubbing off on each other a little. I'm watching more TV and you're waking up early and getting things done. So there's
okay. You don't have to say and getting things done. I'm waking up early. They were getting done. I just wasn't happy about it. And some stuff wasn't getting done.
Well, then also you have time to sit and just enjoy the things that are done. So that's what one thing I love. If there's one thing I love, well, I don't love cleaning, but I love sitting in a clean home. So doing that in the morning is like my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah. I mean, truly, it's a cheat code for life. So congratulations, Mandy. That's amazing. Before we get into the episode, we have new episodes going on basically all the time. When you hear this, the next day, Wednesday, will be our 4th installment of the Scamanda Hulu documentary, and what a wild ride it has been. Can't wait to discuss it. Yeah, I watched a few minutes and I was like, I have to stop until I can take notes because I'm freaking out. I'm so excited. So if you want to check out more bonus content, you can go to patreon.com/Moms and Mysteries podcast, but we also have it on Spotify. There is subscriber only stuff, as well as Apple Podcasts. Very easy to find on either of those places. So join us. We're trying to figure out the next docuseries we're going to do, and super excited. Those have been really, really fun.
All right. So we'll get right into the story of Dail Dinwiddie. Dail was the type of person that everybody had something nice to say about. She was very quiet, sweet, and deeply driven, with a very warm and welcoming nature that really touched everyone around her. Dail was born on April 20th, 1969 to Dan and Jean Dinwiddie. She grew up in Columbia, South Carolina with her younger brother, Drew. And though she was very petite at 5 foot tall and 96 pounds, her presence was anything but small. Dail attended a private school and later graduated from Randolph College in Virginia in 1991 with a degree in art history. Her classmates knew her as kind and compassionate and thought she was destined for great things. After she graduated, Dail moved back home to South Carolina, where she planned to go to graduate school at USC. Her ultimate goal was to study architecture at Clemson. While she was in college, Dail worked as a nanny for an 8-year-old boy whose mother described her as being a responsible woman who was wonderful with children. While she was still in school, Dail was living with her parents in the Forest Hills neighborhood just down the hill from an area called 5 Points. The Five Points area is a lively area with restaurants and bars and little boutiques located near the University of South Carolina. And even late into the night, the streets were always bustling around there. There was nearly the same amount of foot traffic at 2 p.m. as there was at 2 a.m. So it was the kind of place where the people, especially the students around town, felt like nothing truly bad could ever happen there. But Five Points was actually nestled among several less safe neighborhoods. So even though it was within walking distance of Dail's home, she would still often call her father for rides if she was ready to come home from there. Dail suffered with severe asthma, and she was someone who required regular shots and an inhaler at all times.
On the night of September 23rd, 1992, 23-year-old Dail Dinwiddie was in good spirits as she got ready for the long-anticipated U2 concert at Williams-Brice Stadium. So she was excited to be going out with a group of friends that night, and she was dressed casually in a long-sleeved olive green shirt, faded blue jeans, and a bright blue LL Bean jacket that she had tied around her waist. She really fit right in with the thousands of other fans that were at the show that night. So the concert ended around 11:15 p.m., but Dail and her friends wanted to keep the night going, so they headed to Five Points, and eventually they were at Jungle Jim's, which was a crowded bar that they really went to all the time. Dail was seen inside the bar talking to multiple people and really just having a great time with everyone. But at around 1 a.m., things took a turn. As the group started to leave, they got separated from each other in this dense crowd. So Dail searched for her friends, even going back inside the bar and checking for them, but she couldn't find any of the people that she knew. Her friends had all assumed that Dail had made it into one of the several vehicles that the group rode in, all assuming that someone else had given her a ride home that night, but nobody had. At around 1:30 a.m., Dail was seen leaving Jungle Jim's alone. She spoke to the doorman briefly, and he said that she didn't seem intoxicated or distressed. She was slowly drinking a beer and speaking clearly and seemed to be in a really positive state of mind. The doorman asked if Dail needed a cab, and she said she was waiting for her friends to return. And this all makes me so sad because in 2025, you would pick your phone up, text your friends, "Where are you guys?" And they would say, "Oh, we're outside, come on out."
Right.
And at this time, it was like you hoped somebody was waiting for you, but there wasn't any way to communicate. So it just makes it so much more complicated. At some point, she walked off down Hardin Street, and that was the last time Dail was ever seen. The next morning, Dail's father woke up at his usual time, that was around 6:15 a.m., and he went about his normal routine, which included going upstairs to get the family dog from his 16-year-old son Drew's room. But that morning, he noticed something strange. The lights in Dail's bedroom were still on, her radio was still playing, and her bed hadn't been slept in. At first, Dail's father tried to stay calm and assumed she was just staying at a friend's house. But after waking up his wife, Jean, they started making phone calls. None of Dail's friends had seen her since the bar, and none of them had given her a ride home. By 8:30 a.m., the Dinwiddies knew that something was wrong. They called the Columbia City Police Department and reported their daughter missing.
The search for Dail began immediately, with officers scouring the streets and alleys and checking in parking lots between Jungle Jim's and Dail's home. They looked in ditches and along sidewalks, just hoping to find any sign of where she may have gone, but there was nothing. As the investigators tried to piece together what might have happened to Dail, a theory started to emerge that Dail had not simply just walked away. She had actually been taken. But the authorities were still hesitant to call it an abduction at first. Dail's family insisted that she would have never walked home alone at that hour of the night, nor would she have ever accepted a ride home from a stranger. She had always been very cautious, and she never had any problem calling her dad for a ride, and having severe asthma made her even more careful. On top of that, she had left her inhaler and her asthma medication behind at home, and those are two things that she would never willingly go without for a long period of time. But with no sign of Dail anywhere, law enforcement expanded their efforts. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division joined in, as well as the Richland County Sheriff's Department and eventually the FBI. Unfortunately, though, without surveillance cameras in the Five Points area, this is 1992 we're talking about, investigators were working with little more than just the few witness accounts they had. When Dale's friends found out that she was missing, panic set in, and they all went back to Five Points and tried to retrace Dale's steps. They asked around and they handed out photos in hopes that someone had seen her after she left Jungle Gyms, but nobody they talked to had any answers. The next day, the search had intensified and dozens of high school and college students flooded the city, plastering all of Columbia with flyers that had Dale's face on them. Word of her disappearance spread very quickly, and it soon became a national news story as the reality set in that Dail hadn't just wandered off. Something had happened to her. And we're going to get into the rest of the story after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors. This episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack sponsor. IQ Bar is the better-for-you, plant-based protein snack made with brain-boosting nutrients to refuel, nourish, and satisfy hunger without the sugar crash.
I've really been loving IQ Bar lately. These plant-based protein bars are packed with high-quality ingredients, and they help keep me physically and mentally sharp. Plus, they're free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial sweeteners, which I really appreciate.
Me too. I'm obsessed with the chocolate mint chip because not only is it delicious, but it's also easy to throw in my bag and eat it on the run. It's such a great snack that actually fills me up without feeling heavy.
I totally agree. I love how there's so many flavor options like mint chocolate chip, banana nut, and toasted coconut chip. It's actually hard to pick a favorite.
For sure, and I love that they have hydration mixes and even mushroom coffee now too. It really is a one-stop shop for feeling good all day long.
With over 20,000 five-star reviews, more people are starting their day on the right foot with IQ Bar. Honestly, whenever I've got an IQ Bar, I feel good, energized, and ready to tackle anything.
And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products. Plus, get free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MOMS to 64,000. Text MOMS to 64,000. That's MOMS to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Okay, Melissa, I have something I have to tell you about. I tried Daily Look, and I'm officially hooked. It's seriously the best clothing service I've ever used. And you know how picky I am about style, but they totally get it.
Oh, I absolutely know exactly how picky you are. What made it different for you?
Well, for starters, it's not just some algorithm picking clothes out for you. You actually get a personal stylist who takes your preferences, your body shape, and lifestyle into account, so every box is tailored just for you.
Okay, but what'd you get in your first box?
I got a pair of Flying Monkey jeans, which is one of my favorite brands, and honestly, I was shocked at how well they fit and how much I loved them. Jeans are really hard to pick for myself without buying them in person, but Daily Look made it a breeze.
I love it. And please tell me you can do all of this and never leave your house, right?
Exactly. I tried on 12 pieces in the comfort of my living room, and you only keep what you love, so it's actually super easy to send everything else back. Plus, free shipping both ways, and you can't beat free.
Okay, so how can someone sign up?
You just take a quick style quiz to let them know your preferences, and then they send you a box with hand-picked items from top brands like Kate Spade and Good American, and new designers that you might not have ever even heard of. And their size range is also amazing. They carry everything from extra small to 3X.
It's time to get your own personal stylist with Daily Look. Head to dailylook.com to take your style quiz and use code MOM50 for 50% off your first order. Once again, that's dailylook.com for 50% off, and make sure you use our promo code MOM50 so they know we sent you. One last time, dailylook.com and promo code MOM50. And now back to the episode. So before the break, we were discussing the disappearance of Dail Dinwiddie after attending a U2 concert on September 23rd, 1992. And of course, this left her family and friends desperate for answers. And at this point, there's been extensive searches, and of course, they're talking to witnesses, and her disappearance remains unsolved, with really no clues at this point as to where her whereabouts are. On September 26th, just 3 days after she vanished, the police announced a $2,500 reward for information leading to her whereabouts. Dail's father spoke to the state about her disappearance, and he desperately tried to make sense of it. He talked about what a caring and responsible person Dail was and how she was just out having fun with friends that night, and it was really uncharacteristic of her not to be home on time. And he also said that Dail was shy and she was a homebody. Her dad said, quote, "This is every parent's nightmare." By the end of the month, police had officially classified Dail's case as a kidnapping. They had no evidence of a struggle, no confirmed suspects, and really no known motive. But all signs pointed to the same terrifying conclusion, that Dail had been taken. Her parents held a press conference on September 30th where they pleaded for her safe return, and they begged for any information or clue that could bring her home. Days passed with no breakthroughs, and on October 2nd, police provided an update, stating that they had gotten about 300 leads and interviewed over 100 people. But unfortunately, they still didn't have any significant new information. That night, America's Most Wanted aired a 1-minute segment on Dail's disappearance in hopes of generating new leads. Within 2 months, the case had generated more than 800 tips and over 250 people had been interviewed. When the police ran out of new names, they circled back and re-interviewed the same witnesses in case there was anything they had missed. But no one had seen or heard anything. The frustration at this point is really palpable. And a police spokesperson really summed it up when they said, quote, "We don't have any way to eliminate anybody. We can't tell you she's dead. We can't tell you she's alive. She's just missing."
Dail's parents, Dan and Jean, were just in agony wondering what happened to their daughter. They would lay awake night after night, scared to even go to sleep because the phone might ring and they might miss a call about Dail.
That breaks my heart. Can you imagine?
Me too. I know.
They're finally able to get any rest and they can't really even sleep because you can't miss that call.
Yeah. Dail's mom, Jean, sometimes would even drive down to the police station in the middle of the night just to speak with the officers and feel like something was being done. Dan had trouble just sitting still. One night, without really even thinking about it, he just got in the car and drove all the way past the state line, stopping at all the rest areas and gas stations along the way to hang missing persons flyers. In his desperation, he tracked down people who had been in the 5 Points area on the night Dail vanished and convinced them to talk to the police too. Meanwhile, her parents stayed in close contact with the investigators. They just refused to let up or to lose hope. And one thing I did want to say in this case is that it sounds like her parents did have a very good relationship with the investigators. I thought that was very sweet that Dail's mom would go to the police station. They were welcoming of her doing that, just to kind of give her any comfort that they were able to when they had so few answers that they could give her. 2 weeks after Dail vanished, U2 displayed her face on the video screen at their concert, which ensured that thousands of their fans saw her photo. Her friends and loved ones stood outside the venue and gave out flyers while encouraging people to come forward with any information they might have. Their hope was that maybe someone had seen something that night and didn't realize its significance at the time. Back in Colombia, Dail's friends attempted to reenact the night she went missing. They retraced her movements in 5 Points and tried to see things from Dail's perspective. While they were actively on the ground searching, Dail's family and other volunteers worked tirelessly from a makeshift command center where they made calls, printed flyers, and did everything possible to keep the search for Dail alive. Dail's parents tried to maintain a sense of normalcy for their son Drew, but nothing about their lives felt normal anymore. Drew later said that while his parents did shield him in public as best as they could, they were very open about the investigation in private. They became so consumed with grief, fear, and paranoia that for months, they actually made Drew carry a pager and a cell phone everywhere he went. But as time went on, Dail's parents realized that the only way they would be able to cope with her disappearance was to allow their son Drew to live his own life.
That's just so loving to be able to take yourself out of it and to realize you have to let your kid be a kid.
Right.
And, to not let this completely change his life, or not completely change his life, but, that they're so observant to making sure that he's okay as well, aside from their own fears and everything. I think that's incredible.
Course, yeah.
So the Dinwiddies were determined to prevent another tragedy like theirs, so they turned their grief into action. Every fall, they gave safety talks to incoming freshmen at USC and warned them about the dangers of being alone at night. Dail's parents hoped that if just one life was saved, her story wouldn't be in vain. But as the years passed, the weight of not knowing became unbearable. By 1997, after 5 years had passed, Dail's parents sat down with the state to reflect on their heartbreaking journey. Jean said that she still clung to hope and that she still ran to the mailbox every day to see if there was a letter. And every time the phone rings, she thinks maybe it's Dail calling. They described the endless cycle they were in and how their minds were really never at rest. But investigators weren't ready to give up on Dail's case yet either. Over the years, they had done hundreds of interviews. They dug through dirt, drained lakes, and even ripped up a house floor when the new tenants reported a foul smell coming from a section that had been replaced. Police had even met with psychics for the first time in their careers. Literally, they were doing anything they could to try and find Dail. One tip they got was actually promising. There was a convicted drug dealer who was looking to cut a deal on his 20-year prison sentence, and he claimed that he was present when 3 men abducted and killed Dail. The man even named the 3 suspects, and they were shockingly already on the list of prime suspects. According to the man, Dail's body had been stuffed into the trunk of a car, and then the car was dumped into a lake on private property in Lower Richland. Police took this claim very seriously, and they sent divers to the lake. Shockingly, they did find a submerged vehicle. A crane was brought in to remove the car from the water, but when they pried the trunk open, it was empty. There had never been a body inside of it, and this tipster had been lying. Investigators were disappointed, but they pressed forward. That same year, 5 new detectives were assigned to review the case files and conduct re-interviews of 32 individuals. They chased every possible lead, trying to uncover anything that may have been overlooked. But in the end, there were no new breakthroughs. The Dinwiddies remained in their Columbia house for over a decade because they were afraid to move in case Dail ever found her way back. But in 2005, they made the difficult decision to leave. The family moved just around the corner, though, so they felt like they were still within reach, just in case.
By October of 2000, the police were still searching for answers. It had been 8 years with no significant leads, but then out of nowhere, a new name entered the conversation. And that name was Reynaldo Rivera. Reynaldo was a serial killer who operated in Georgia and South Carolina. He had been arrested in Georgia, but at the time of Dail's disappearance, he was actually attending USC. So the authorities started looking into him as a possible suspect in Dail's disappearance. The Columbia Police Department and the Richland County Sheriff's Department both wanted to speak with Reynaldo in regards to Dail's case. They felt that the possibility that he could have been in the 5 Points area and targeting young women on the night Dail went missing just was too big to be ignored. As they dug deeper, they noticed a pattern with him. Around 30 women had come forward and reported that Reynaldo had approached them in the past. These women had eerily similar stories. Reynaldo would wait in parking lots, calling women over to his car or van under the pretense of asking them for directions. And then he would shift the conversation to start talking about his photography and his business plans and ideas before he would eventually ask the victim if they had ever considered modeling. It was noticed that Reynaldo's victims all had strikingly similar features. They were all petite and slender and had shoulder-length blondish hair, just like Dail. One of Reynaldo's victims and survivors, 18-year-old Chrissy Lee Barton, later spoke about the scary encounter that she had with Reynaldo. It was October of 2000, and she was just stopped at a stop sign when Reynaldo approached her car. The cars that were behind Chrissy Lee started to honk because Reynaldo was actually holding up traffic trying to talk to her. So he suggested that they pull over into a nearby parking lot and continue their conversation. Chrissy Lee complied, and when they stopped, Reynaldo introduced himself as a professional photographer, and he asked her if she had ever considered doing any modeling. When Chrissy Lee asked him for proof of his credentials, he didn't have anything to show her, so she actually started to feel off about the whole thing and tried to brush him off. But Reynaldo was persistent about taking photos of her right that moment. Chrissy Lee suggested that Reynaldo could follow her to her stepfather's apartment, and she actually tried to lose him in traffic along the way. She was weaving in and out of the different lanes, but he stayed on her tail and pulled into the apartment complex right behind her. Reynaldo parked his car right next to hers and followed her inside. Once they were inside the apartment, Chrissy Lee went to the bathroom, leaving Reynaldo alone in the living area. Reynaldo used this opportunity to grab a knife from the kitchen, and he attacked Chrissy Lee from behind. She was raped and sodomized as the attack left her slipping in and out of consciousness. Reynaldo then strangled Chrissy Lee until he believed she was dead.
Reynaldo left Chrissy Lee's unconscious body lying on the floor while he left to go move his car down the street. He then went back to the apartment to clean up any evidence he might have left behind, and that's when he noticed that Chrissy Lee was still alive. Reynaldo made a second attempt to strangle her to death with a towel before grabbing another knife and stabbing her repeatedly in the neck, severing her jugular vein. Somehow, against all odds, Chrissy Lee survived. She regained consciousness and managed to crawl to the phone and call 911. When police arrived, they found that the door was locked from the inside and that Reynaldo had escaped through a back window. News of the attack spread quickly, and when a description of the suspect was released, 2 people came forward to say they thought it was Reynaldo Rivera. Those 2 people were his coworker and his sister-in-law, which
Those
I
are
give
pretty
huge
big
props to.
Yes, those are
Mhm.
those people are huge. I would definitely weigh their opinion very heavily for sure.
Absolutely. And it has to take a lot to call on someone that you work with every day
Right.
and someone that you are related to.
Right.
So, I mean, they must have known he was trouble. So authorities soon found him in South Carolina in a motel room after an apparent suicide attempt. Once he was taken into custody, he not only admitted to attacking Chrissy Lee, but he also confessed to the rape and murder of 21-year-old Marnie Glista in September of 2000 and 17-year-old Tabitha Bosdell in June of 2000. Marnie Glista was an Army sergeant stationed at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And on the morning of September 5th, 2000, her husband, who was actually deployed in Kuwait at the time, had tried to call her, but he wasn't able to reach her, so he contacted her commanding officer, who then went to her home with another officer to check on her. When they arrived, they noticed right away that something was wrong. Marnie's husband's car was still in the driveway with the windows down and bags of groceries sitting untouched on the passenger seat. Marnie's cell phone, wallet, and a receipt showing that the groceries were purchased at 11:12 a.m. the day before were found among the items left behind in the car. The officers knocked on the door several times, but there was no answer. But there were lights and ceiling fans inside the home that were on. The Army officers felt concerned enough to call the police to come check things out.
When the police arrived, they found a gruesome scene. Marnie was on the bedroom floor at the foot of the bed, barely clinging to life. She was making gurgling noises, and one of her fingers twitched just slightly. She was fully nude, except for an unfastened bra draped over her shoulders, and her body showed clear signs of a struggle. Her neck and wrists were tightly wrapped with a white medical tape, and severe abrasions on her wrists suggested that she had fought desperately to try and free herself. The injuries on her wrists were so deep they were equivalent to second-degree burns. Marnie had bruises on her chest, knees, and pelvic area, as well as scratches and abrasions all over her body. Her back had indentation marks from the bed rails, which indicated that she had been pressed up against them for quite some time. Doctors determined that oxygen deprivation had led to severe and irreversible brain damage. Marnie's brain continued to swell until eventually it shut down her breathing, and doctors had to put her on a ventilator. 3 days later, she was declared brain dead, and her family made the difficult decision to remove her from life support. The medical examiner later concluded that Marnie had been sexually assaulted and that her cause of death was the delayed result of ligature strangulation. Months earlier, in June of that same year, 17-year-old Tabitha Bosdell was walking to her telemarketing job in Augusta, Georgia, when she encountered Reynaldo Rivera. It's unknown exactly how he convinced her to go with him, but he lured her into his car, completely unaware of the horror that awaited her. Reynaldo drove Tabitha to a secluded area where she fought for her life as he raped and sodomized her before strangling her, first with his arm and then with her own shirt. After Tabitha was dead, Reynaldo disposed of her body in a wooden area off an exit on Interstate 20 and tossed her clothing on the side of the highway. For months, Tabitha's fate remained a mystery, but all that changed on October 14th when Reynaldo, who was now in custody, led investigators to her remains. Officers from both the county and the sheriff's department found human skeletal remains buried beneath leaves and debris in a secluded, wooded area in Columbia County. And we have more to get into after one last break to hear a word from this week's sponsors.
Okay, I have to tell you about this cashmere sweater I got from Quince. It's seriously the softest thing I have ever worn, and it didn't cost me nearly as much as I thought.
Cashmere, huh? I've always thought of cashmere as one of those splurge items that I definitely cannot afford, but if it's from Quince, I'm guessing that's not the case.
Exactly. It's way more affordable than you'd expect. I mean, I've seen similar sweaters at other places for triple the price. Quince makes luxury feel a lot more within reach.
Well, you're the sweater expert, but what's the catch?
No catch. They just partner directly with the factories, so you're getting all the premium quality without paying for the brand name. Plus, everything's ethically made, so you don't have to feel bad about it.
All right, I'm sold. Where's my cashmere sweater?
Well, with cashmere sweaters starting at just $50, it looks like you can treat yourself to one today.
Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/moms for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/moms to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/moms.
So let's be real for a second. Self-care is something we all know we should be doing, but finding the time and energy to stick with it, that's really the tough part. Whether it's squeezing in a movie by yourself or just sneaking in a quiet moment, it's hard to make it happen all the time. But I found one change that's effortless and has truly transformed how I unwind at night. And it's something you can do too. Upgrading your sheets to Boll & Branch's 100% organic cotton.
Oh, I am all about this. I know we joke a lot about self-care, but you know I actually prioritize my sleep, and it means everything to me. And Boll & Branch sheets help me make all my sleeping dreams a reality. These sheets are so buttery soft and breathable, I honestly feel like I'm being wrapped in luxury every single night. Plus, they just keep getting softer and softer with every wash. It's like they're made for pure relaxation.
Exactly. And the best part, it's a one-time change that makes a world of difference. No matter how stressful your day is, you'll feel like you're floating into relaxation the second you hit the sheets. I have mine in the color mineral. They look great. They feel great. I'm obsessed. And trust me, you're going to notice a difference the very first night.
And if you're not totally sold, they've got a 30-night risk-free guarantee. You can test them out for a month, wash them, style them, feel the difference. And if you're not convinced they've changed your sleep game, you get a full refund, no questions asked.
So give yourself the gift of better sleep and way easier self-care. You deserve it.
Now's your chance to change the way you sleep with Boll & Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/moms. That's Boll & Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/moms to save 15%. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
You know that feeling when your kids keep asking, what do we have to eat? It's like the Gen Alpha version of, are we there yet? And you've honestly got nothing but half-empty cabinets that are staring right back at you. Yeah, I've been there a time or 10.
Same girl, same. But that's why I love Thrive Market. It's my go-to online grocery store that delivers all of my healthy essentials straight to my door. I don't even have to leave my couch. I can shop for snacks, pantry staples, and everything else I need, all while avoiding those long lines at the store. One of my favorite things? The Chomp beef sticks. They're the perfect combo of crunchy, savory, and a little spicy, and my kids even love them too. Plus, they're actually filling, so the "Mom, I'm hungry" cries are few and far between.
I think one of the coolest things they offer is the Thrive Market Healthy Swap Scanner. Basically, if you or your kid like a food that's full of stuff that maybe you don't want them to have, you can just scan the product and it actually recommends healthier alternatives. I was able to swap out a few sugary snacks for high-quality, dye-free favorites like Lesser Evil popcorn and Simple Mills crackers. I didn't tell my kids, and they still don't know.
And shopping is a breeze with Thrive Market's filters. Whether it's high-protein options or gluten-free snacks, I just filter for what I need and stock up on things like Primal Kitchen sauces and Siete chips. It's so easy and saves me time. Ready to make the switch? Go to thrivemarket.com/momsandmysteries for 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's THRIVE market.com/momsandmysteries. thrivemarket.com/momsandmysteries.
And now back to the episode. So before the break, authorities are investigating Ronaldo Rivera. At this point, he has confessed to multiple murders, but they're trying to see if there is a connection between him and Dail Dinwiddie. These stunning confessions drove authorities to intensify their efforts to determine whether or not Ronaldo was involved in Dale's disappearance. He fit the profile, he also had a history of attacking petite blonde women, and he had been in the Columbia area at that time. Ronaldo is also responsible for the murders of 18-year-old Tiffany Wilson and 17-year-old Melissa Dinges in 1999, but unfortunately the details about their murders are not widely known. Ronaldo told authorities that he raped around 200 sex workers in the D.C. area as well as South Carolina, but that he didn't kill anyone prior to 1999. Police suspect that there are other victims of Ronaldo that they just don't know about. But in the end, he was never officially tied to any other cases, including Dale's. In August of 2012, 20 years after Dale vanished, investigators made another push for answers and announced a $20,000 reward for information, as well as an age-progressed photo of what Dale might look like at 43 years old. Police still had no conclusive evidence that Dale was dead or alive, and they hoped the image would reignite public interest and to generate new leads. Dale's parents, Dan and Jean, made another heartfelt plea for someone to come forward. Jean was emotional as she said, quote, "I don't know that Dale is safe or where she is. I don't really think that someone from Mars came here and took her, but someone did. 20 years after the abduction of my child, I still cannot rest easy because I don't know where she is," end quote. The family even took an unusual approach, and they released their personal phone numbers in hopes that someone somewhere might be willing to call them instead of the police. I think that's amazing they did that, but it scares me because you hear so much. Yeah, like even families who don't have anything out there like that, like their personal phone number. We know we're friends with somebody who got like a false lead on in a text message, but it was a scam.
Right. There's just people out there that just do things that you can't understand just to be a nuisance.
So the years continued to pass, but the pain never dulled for the Dinwiddies. In 2018, on the 25th anniversary, Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott spoke to the state about the impact the case had on his department. He said that Dale's parents still called regularly, sometimes in the middle of the night because they were unable to sleep. Sheriff Lott said, quote, "I can see the pain in their eyes and hear it in their voices, but they are still focused, and that has fueled us," end quote. That actually gave me chills because, man, that is just, I can't imagine going through this all those years and still, even the police still getting these calls. It has to break their heart, too, to know that they don't have anything new to give them, and they have to just be waiting for the day that they can. Dale's brother Drew also spoke about how their family had never given up and said they want answers more than anything.
By this time, investigators had followed up on more than 1,000 tips, but none of them had led to Dale. The search had led investigators to dig up bones that ended up being from a deer, checking properties with ground-penetrating radar, and tearing up a floor at a Five Points home to find the cause of a foul odor, and pulling a car from a pond. Investigators had traveled across the Southeast and as far as Las Vegas and Minnesota to interview criminals who claimed to know something or claimed that they were ready to confess. But the stories they told were all easily debunked. The FBI, state, and local authorities still check for new suggestions monthly and investigate any captured serial killers or kidnappers who have any ties to Columbia. And DNA from any unidentified bodies is compared to Dale's DNA. In the fall of 2021, nearly 3 decades after Dale vanished, a new rumor began to spread through Columbia that the police had finally identified a person of interest in her disappearance. The speculation started when Fitz News reported that a woman had come forward to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division to report a sexual assault. And during this woman's interview, she revealed something chilling. She said the man who allegedly assaulted her had made a very unsettling comment. They said, quote, "You remind me of Dail Dinwiddie." Investigators were immediately interested in who this perpetrator was. And we're not going to name the person because the charges against them were later dropped, but the suspect was a prominent attorney in Columbia who was also accused of committing lewd acts on a minor in 2002 and 2004. And for those reasons, his house was actually raided in March of 2021. The police that were investigating the assault of the woman in 2021 looked into the possibility that this attorney had been involved in Dale's disappearance, as he was known to seek out the attention of younger women and he frequently hung out in the Five Points area. He even loved the bar Jungle Jim's, and he was good friends with one of the bartenders that was actually working on the night Dail was last seen. However, despite this being a very promising lead at first, the police ended up being able to prove that there was no connection there. It was just another rumor that had gotten people's hopes up.
So upsetting. In May of 2022, investigators spoke with the Deck podcast about Dail's case. They said that after decades of investigating, there were still some indisputable facts that shaped their theory of what happened that night. The last confirmed sighting of Dail was at 1:30 a.m. on September 24th, 1992, and the last person confirmed to have seen her was a doorman at Jungle Jim's. He saw her walking north, away from the bar, and in a hurry. Despite Five Points being crowded that night, no one else ever reported seeing her after that moment. Investigators had concluded that Dail likely made it out of the crowded bar district before she was abducted, and they believe she was taken somewhere isolated and away from potential witnesses. They haven't been able to rule out the possibility that she was taken right there in the middle of the nightlife without anyone noticing, but they believe she had walked away from the area. Police are sure of one thing, and that's that Dail was taken against her will. One of the lead investigators, Detective Reese, is convinced that she was abducted and murdered by someone that she didn't know, and that the killer planned the crime in advance and just waited for the right moment to strike. It's believed that Dail was being held against her will during the final minutes of her life. On September 24th, 2022, exactly 30 years after Dail disappeared, the Columbia Police Department released a public statement that included messages from her parents. Quote, "Our family and friends still hope and pray each day that someone will come forward with information that will lead us to Dail," end quote. But no new information has surfaced and no one has ever been charged. Dail's case remains the oldest missing persons case in Columbia, South Carolina. At the time of her disappearance, Dail was 5 feet tall and weighed 98 pounds. She had light brown hair with blonde highlights, brown eyes, and dimples. She was last seen wearing an olive green, long-sleeve shirt, faded blue jeans, a bright blue LL Bean jacket that was tied around her waist, and new white running shoes. If you have any information, please call the Midlands Crime Stoppers at 888-274-6372. And all tipsters can remain anonymous. I was actually very surprised to hear that this was the longest missing persons case in South Carolina.
Me too.
But it's just so shocking, and that there were so many people around. And
that's one of the most frustrating, I feel like, things to come to terms with and to accept, is that it was not, it was a very crowded night. It was a crowded place. And it's just that thought of, how is there not someone who has seen something that just hasn't come forward, or maybe didn't realize they saw something that was could be valuable information to the police, whether it's just seeing a car that seemed like it was out of place, or a person that didn't look like they belong there, or anything. A lot of times people see things like that and don't report it. We've talked about that before, about just not knowing if something is important or not. And that's like just one of the hardest things about this case, is because there was so many people there and just not even knowing who they were, who all was there. There's no way of knowing to even find them and ask them any questions. And it's just really sad to think about a time when there's no surveillance cameras, there's not a lot of cell phones, so there's not a lot of leads that they had to go on, and that's just really sad.
Absolutely. And then all the friends who left thinking the other friend had her, like, I can't imagine waking up the next morning and thinking, oh my gosh, I thought she rode with this person. But it seemed like her friends and family really rallied and did as much as they could. The police interviewed so many people. And I don't know, I'm so hopeful in all of these cases that families will get answers.
They will get answers.
Yeah. And I hope it's sooner rather than later for her family, especially.
Definitely. Okay, guys, that was our story for this week. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week. Same time, same place, new story.
Have a great week.
Bye.